Right. Hi, everyone. Good day, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you very much for attending our webinar this afternoon. I am Kennedy Tokura, one of the founders here at Mitigant. I'm also the CTO. So today in this webinar, we're going to be talking about the DORA, and definitely we want to look at how DORA impacts companies, especially that are using the cloud infrastructure in Europe. We're going to be looking at some very important information during the course of this webinar. And we will encourage you, if you have any questions as we discuss, you can either, we're going to have a questions and answers session at the end of the webinar. You can also just drop it in the chat, and then we will basically pick up these questions at the end of the webinar and try to provide answers. Also, you will notice that you are muted at this point in time, and also your cameras are kind of off, just for the sake of privacy. And also, so this webinar is going to be divided into two parts. We actually have two speakers, so I'm also going to be speaking, but I will speak in the second session. In the first session, we have in our midst Vasily. So Vasily is actually from advisory. He will say more about himself, but he's going to be the first speaker. He's going to be talking and providing some very important aspects about DORA, and then I will kind of enhance what he's going to be saying, and also give you a demo, so to provide a very tangible experience for you. So without much ado, I will like to invite Vasily to the floor. Thank you so much, Vasily.
Thank you very much, Kennedy, as well. And of course, thanks, Mitigant, for this really great opportunity to attend this webinar as your co-speaker. It marks a really great honor for me. And about me, my name is Vasily. I am currently a senior cloud security consultant and cloud compliance consultant as well by the company of Advisory. I have studied law in Germany, in Nuremberg, and I am currently an AWS community builder and an AWS trainer. And today, as Kennedy also stated, we are going to speak about the impacts of DORA, of this notorious, one would say, regulation of the European Union across the industries and the companies around the European Union. So let me share my screen and begin with a little journey to this. One would say notorious, one would say necessary regulation of the European Union. So that would be no other than the DORA. So we are going to speak about who is impacted from DORA. What is DORA in particular? Why is it important for us? So which timelines are for us important to take under consideration? And of course, like Kennedy also stated, how can we get insights if we are compliant with DORA? And if we are not, what can we do in order to alleviate the situation? Now, I'm assuming you can see my screen. So if there are any problems, please feel free to use the chat or anything. So, like I said about me, I am a senior cloud security, compliance, and governance consultant at Advisory. I am really active in the AWS community, which is how I also met Kennedy, the co-speaker of mine today. We've met in Berlin at the AWS Summit. Really nice experience. And like I said, I am 9 times AWS certified. I'm an AWS trainer. I am also a certified information security manager and certified in the IT risk and control environment. Now let's begin. What is DORA? Now, DORA, of course, is an abbreviation for the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Now, this is a fancy name for a law that is imposing to us some new requirements in order to be resilient if we are by occupation in the financial sector of Europe. Now, here is a clue. We can see here EU financial sector. Please be advised. This does not mean that only banks or insurances or financial or credit institutions are affected by this regulation. DORA has a much broader scope, and it says if you have anything to do with the financial sector, this regulation applies to you. Now, the purpose and the aim of DORA is, of course, to strengthen the IT security for all the entities that are being affected from this regulation and are relying on technology, and especially third-party providers. And this is where our webinar comes into play today, in order to explain how we are going to leverage, if we are in the cloud, how we are going to leverage the cloud and the arsenal of it in order to be DORA compliant. And the ultimate goal of DORA is, of course, to harmonize. From my law background, I can tell you that the European Union is a very big bureaucratic monster when it comes to regulations and laws across every member state. And DORA is an endeavor in order to bring everything which is regulated from the member states themselves, to bring it under one umbrella, which is called DORA, and not to have any misunderstandings more regarding what should we do if we operate, for example, in Malta, in Germany, in France, in Italy, in Spain, in Portugal, or wherever across the EU. The scope and the timeline. Now, who's affected? We've talked a little bit about that. As you can see, we have bank insurances, we have investment firms, we have payment institutions, for example, PayPal or Klarna. We have crypto asset services, and here is it, critical ICT providers. ICT is an abbreviation which we'll see a lot in DORA. It stands for Information and Communication Technologies. So nothing to be afraid of, it's nothing new. It's just a much fancier, according to EU regulators, abbreviation for IT technologies and IT providers. And the key dates which we have to have in mind, they're both due right now, the January 16th of 2023, where DORA was entered into force, but then it triggered the so-called grace period, which gave a little bit of time for companies to familiarize themselves with all the requirements of this new regulation, and the January the 17th of 2025, where the two-year grace period has ended, and now everybody out there which is affected from the scope of DORA is obligated to be compliant with it. Here I have also a sentence which for the, I would say, the common technical people out there, it does not mean that much, because compliance is compliance. Either you are or you're not. But from a legal perspective, it gives us some, I would say, some, let's just put it that way, that we are a little bit more chilled if, of course, our infrastructure is not that critical. The principle of proportionality means that if we, for example, are a company that that specializes in only the financial sector, we're not going to have the same penalties like, for example, a critical IT provider, which provides, of course, for everybody in every critical sector of the industry, in every financial institution out there. So that means the principle of proportionality. Now, walking through DORA, we're going to explore that DORA consists of 5 fundamental pillars. And these pillars are nothing less than a categorization and a concretization of the requirements according to their scope and domain where they find application to. In the first pillar, we see the ICT risk management. We have to be in the situation that we are always in a position to evaluate and to manage effectively our risk that comes from IT or from external resources. That means that we have not only to have a very consistent risk management program, but this has also to deliver results. Then we have the incident management, which is furthermore a a concretized pillar of the risk management. With risk management, we talk about the probability of the occurrence of an event. With incident management, we talk about what to do if we are not talking no longer about any probability, rather than an event. Something has happened and we have to deal with it. Then we have, of course, the resilience testing. Even if we don't experience any incidents in our company, we have to prove that we can manage any incident coming to us. That means we have to perform assessments of our critical systems, maybe, of course, of our non-critical systems, which are indirectly or directly connected with our critical assets. Then we have to manage our third-party risk. I'm sure that everybody in this virtual room has heard something about the US government and their intention to escalate their trade relationships with Europe and the world, but let's focus on Europe and this tariff war that is taking place right now. Well, if we are, for example, in the cloud, in a hyperscaler, like AWS or like Azure or like Google, this is a third party, which of course poses a significant risk to us, and which is that tariffs. Maybe we are no longer in position to pay what it's required from us, from our cloud hyperscaler provider. That means this is a risk that it has to be dealt with. And then, of course, information sharing. If we have, for example, peers in our industry, if we have companies with whom we can exchange information in order to enhance our resilience and our security posture, information sharing is encouraged by DORA, of course, under very strict circumstances, and with security being continuously a pillar which poses all the required or all the requirements that are discussed in DORA. But nevertheless, it is encouraged by DORA to share information regarding resilience, to share information regarding security. And let's now take a bit of deep dive in all of these pillars, but I would like to keep it simple, because I'd like then to give you the opportunity to see in real time how you for yourself can mark or can see for yourself how you're going to see if you're compliant with DORA or not. Now, the first pillar, the risk management framework, the first thing is to have a comprehensive documentation, an asset protection, and clear responsibilities. Now here, when we talk about comprehensive documentation, we're not talking only about a document where we just have some information regarding some assets of ours, but we're talking about a very comprehensive mapping of all our environment, cloud or not, IT or not, human or not. And this has also to be marked with a significant risk factor. And from that document, which in the risk language is called the risk register, have everything that we need in order to evaluate the risk and then to draw ourselves into conclusions or to draw conclusions from them. The responsibilities are, of course, mandatory and, in my opinion, also paramount. Why is that? Because if you don't know who is responsible, or even worse, accountable for something, then you don't know how to act and who is the person to ask if something happens. And of course, asset protection, everything which we call information asset has to be protected from every risk that we have already documented. Here's where cloud, every hyperscaler out there, comes for us in order to make this journey a little bit more easy. For example, we have in AWS or whatever hyperscaler you'd like, tools like organizations or Active Directory in Microsoft, where we can put all of our accounts, all of our environments together, and then with attributes, with roles, with policies, we can specify who is receiving rights for what, and in that way define risks, risk scenarios, then responsibilities, accountabilities, and after that we can document our assets and we can have a very thorough asset protection plan. Now the second pillar dives a little bit more into the world, what happens when the risk materializes itself. Now, the first pillar talks about probabilities, talks about a very general and high-level risk management framework, which is of course great, but on itself, it doesn't give any protection. Now, the incident management is where things get dirty, it's where things get physical or technical in our world. And it talks about incident management and reporting. First of all, we have to specify detection mechanisms, how we're going to manage our incidents, how we're going to report. And of course, after that, we have to have mechanisms in place where we perform root cause analysis, where we can become resilient, which speaks again to the third pillar, so that the incident do not occur again. Now, I would like here to take a break because the incident management is a very technical aspect. And now I would like to give over to Kennedy again in order to demonstrate to us how we're going to test if we have all this nice stuff that we talked about in place. Kennedy, please show your magic.
All right. Thank you so much, Vasily. So I will just share my screen, if you don't mind. Okay, thank you very much. So I hope you can see my screen already. All right, so I will basically skip this since I already did some introduction. So thank you so much for already laying a very solid foundation, Vasily. And what I'm going to do here is just kind of emphasize on some of the topics already covered by Vasily, and then I will give a tangible, basically a demonstration of our mitigant infrastructure, platform, so to give a very solid understanding. So before I proceed, I would just like to talk a little bit about cyber resilience, which is kind of one of the major aspects of DORA, because there's always a little bit of misconception between cybersecurity and cyber resilience. And the R in DORA actually stands for resilience. And Vasily already mentioned about some aspects around incident response testing and so forth. So when we look at the definition of cyber resilience, we see that, and this definition is from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, so US NIST. And they say that it's the ability to anticipate, withstand, recover from, and adapt to adverse conditions, stresses, attacks, or compromises on systems that use or are enabled by cyber resources. So the most important aspect here are to take note of anticipation, how to withstand, how to recover, and how to adapt. Now, these words are kind of a little bit, they're very, very theoretical, and that's why a lot of things around cyber resilience, people end doing, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, they end up just practicing cyber security, and they're not able to kind of jump, or let's say bridge the gap between these two different constructs, which are actually different. All right. So let's go to a little bit more tangible aspects. And I'm sorry that I'm going to be talking a lot of the corresponding cloud security mappings here are are using AWS, and this is just for the sake of illustration or to give some more tangible examples. Obviously, when we are looking at the hyperscalers, they all have equivalent services that you can use. So these are some of the domains or some of the aspects of that are actually mandated in DORA that I have shown on this table here. So first is encryption and cryptographic controls, and this is very important because you have to be able to protect your resources, your data. You don't want them to get into the wrong hands. And on AWS, there are different services. For example, the key management service, certificate manager, and the cloud which is hardware security module. And these services, you can actually use them to fulfill the encryption and cryptographic controls. And when it comes to key management, you can also use the key management service. You can configure it to automatically rotate the keys, which is something that is recommended. You can leverage CloudTrail for login, so you can be able to have visibility into the activities around your encryption keys. The other aspect is vulnerability and patch management, and AWS Systems Manager has a patch manager which you can use to automate the detection of, actually Inspector is used for detecting, so you can scan and detect vulnerabilities. And if you want to roll out patches, you can use the AWS Systems Manager. And of course, the Security Hub brings all the findings, whether it's from the cloud control plane or the databases. It basically acts like a central place where you can see your cloud security posture. And the Security Hub is also doing some kind of checks, basically continuously assessing your cloud infrastructure, so you can see the gaps, you can see where you have, where there are findings, where you need to improve. The other thing here is login. Login is also one of the aspects that's emphasized a lot if you look into DORA, because that's where you can actually begin to have an understanding of malicious activities or suspicious activities. And CloudTrail does a lot of logging. CloudWatch also you could use for logging, because there are some things you cannot see in CloudTrail. So most times you can actually use both CloudTrail and CloudWatch. Of course, things like S3 config, they have different kinds of logs. So at the end of the day, most of the time, you have to bring all of this together to centrally enhance your visibility. Now, let's talk about network security. Obviously, AWS has things like VPCs, it has network firewalls. It has the AWS Shield, which you can use for protecting yourself from distributed denial of service attacks. And also it has a direct connect, so you can basically connect to maybe on-premises systems, or maybe you want to connect to other cloud service providers. All right. Of course, there's more here. There's DORA talks about change management. And there are things like Terraform, infrastructure as code. So AWS has CloudFormation templates. Nowadays, they've improved it, and you can actually bring in third-party tools like Terraform. You can use it. At the end of the day, you want to be able to control changes. You want to be able to see when things change, and to be able to either have one single point from where you deploy, so you can manage changes. Security operations is very important, because now we're even getting into the aspects that begin to allow us to move from just cybersecurity to cyber resilience, because security operations, you begin to talk about threat detection, investigations using detective for root cause analysis, and CloudWatch for anomaly detection. So you remember we talked about, we looked at the definition of cyber resilience, and we talked about how you can respond, how you can react. And threat detection tools allow you to respond at least if there are things that are going wrong, so that means the attackers are already in your infrastructure, and Guardity is one of the tools that helps you to it does some analysis, and it can actually alert you if it detects activities that are not normal. Of course, you have things like business continuity management, and this is where things like backups come in, and they're very, very important, because if there are activities, the malicious activities that are beginning to impact on your business operations, sometimes you need the backups to be able to restore services or to push services to some other healthy environments. Things like S3, cross-region replication, Security Hub also come in, and EC2 auto recovery. Of course, we haven't talked about access control, data security. These are very, very important aspects, because you want to make sure that the people who have access to your environments are the legitimate people. They are not attackers. You don't want. You also want to be able to control that if legitimate people have access, it's not too much. That you want to be able to control the blast radius in case things go bad. So now we come to this part here, which is something that is very specific to DORA, which is the digital operational resilience and testing. And I've just given an example here. I will go more into it, but you see here it's kind of empty, because it's one aspect where you really, really test your cyber resilience, and that's where you have to test and be sure that all the stuff that we talked about actually work as they should. It goes beyond theoretical aspects of documentation, or of having tools. It's about actually testing the behavior of these tools when they are under unfavorable conditions, and this is something that AWS doesn't really provide a service for, and usually, and I will come back to that, some recommendations in the next slides. So I brought in here the AWS security maturity model because it's important to tell organizations that DORA is new, but if you've been in cybersecurity for some time, you will notice that there's a lot of things specified on that DORA that probably you are already doing. So it doesn't mean you have to do a lot of things from the scratch. And I do think that if you want to, like a good way to evaluate where you are is to look at this security maturity model. Because this is something by AWS. Again, sincerely sorry for using AWS. I think other providers also have equivalent. But you can see that it has this cloud adoption foundation levels. It has from start, advanced, excel. It also has these quick wins, actually 4 phases: quick wins, foundational, efficient, and optimized. And under here, you see different capabilities, and they're kind of very. If you look at DORA, you will see that some of the breakdown of DORA actually captures virtually all of these different aspects of cloud security. And over here, I think that to be kind of prepared for DORA, like a baseline will be to be at somewhere between this phase 3 and 4, because if you go through this, you will see that it kind of gives details on exactly where you should be. And I can provide the link to this document. It's online, and you can basically click every one of these boxes here, and they have self-contained documents where they describe in details what exactly they mean by each of these things. Sorry, some very important aspects here, which I think I also highlighted in DORA is firstly, you see in the Excel phase 4, there's the forming a writing, which is attacker's point of view. This is kind of very important, and we will see more about it. running tabletop exercises, with basically doing some simulations. There is also the disaster recovery planning, and on the other side they talk also about multi-region disaster recovery automation, which is kind of some kind of chaos engineering or security chaos engineering. And I wanted to highlight these parts because these are really going in a direction of cyber resilience aside from cybersecurity. Right. So again, you'll see that these 4 areas I highlighted in last slide really they come under the testing for the digital operational resilience testing, and in DORA there is one of the aspects which they call the threat-led penetration testing. So DORA, under DORA, there are different kinds of resilience testing, and I just talked about some of them here, which probably auditors or the designated authorities, we basically implement this test. There's a threat-led penetration testing which aims at simulating real-world cyber attacks, and this is actually based on threat intelligence. It's based on risk management. It's supposed to be done very specific to the organization that is being tested. Incident response testing, Vasily talked about incident response already. And the idea of this test is to see how organizations can detect, they can respond to and recover from security incidents. Of course, business continuity testing is also important because, how do you continue your business operations when you're under an attack? And the idea of this test is to kind of exercise your procedures, all the measures you put in place, your run books, and things like that. And of course, compliance reporting is also one of the aspects, looking at the compliance, also looking at the reporting the compliance. Obviously, there's a lot that is embedded in this, and I will just continue in the next slide with a very short demo to give you more tangible insights into some of the things that we talked about. So what you see here is Mitigant Cloud Security Platform. And currently, we have implemented a lot of these things that I mentioned, starting from the AWS maturity model that I talked about. And basically, we run these assessments, which are based on different compliance benchmarks. But when you look at the risky findings here, you can see findings about things like the key management service, which we talked about. Here it's talking about key management service. It has found a key that hasn't been rotated, right? And these kinds of tools help you to kind of automate the process of detecting where there are gaps, so that you can easily identify these gaps and have the opportunity to be able to fix them before attackers find and actually detect the gaps. So it covers different AWS services. We already saw some of them. We already talked about some of them. For example, we have things around, okay, this is, there's no finding here, but this is at the network layer. I think if we look at EC2, so on the EC2 here, we can see things around virtual private VPC, virtual private group, which is on the network security. You have to make sure that you are using it properly, and so forth. So that all of these, you can use it to kind of automate the process of aligning with DORA. The other aspect, which is talking about now digital operational resiliency testing, is where you have to do things like penetration testing that is based on threat intelligence. You have to run incident response test. And this is an area that AWS doesn't have a service. Luckily, we have developed our cloud attack emulation along the lines of allowing companies to be able to conduct these kinds of exercises. And it's very simplified because it's based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And you can see over here that it also has basically, we have integrated cyber threat intelligence. So for example, Scattered Spider is a very notorious threat actor that targets financial institutions. And so we have different attacks. You can just select, you can basically run these attacks, and it connects directly to the cloud account. It emulates the behavior of an attacker, and again, it generates a report. And you can see success means that the attack was successful. So if you read into DORA, at some point in time, there is going to be this test, which most likely will be done by external entities. But with a tool like this, you can run through these scenarios and prepare before the main event occurs. And this helps you to be better prepared. This helps you to be prepared not just because you want to get a pass mark from the main auditors or the guys who are going to be evaluating, but you want to continuously ensure that all your threat detection tools or your incident response procedures are working exactly how you expect them to work. So with that, I will basically go back to the slide deck. I guess that should be the end of my slide. Yep. So I guess I will hand over back to Vasily, who is going to be providing further information on how we as Mitigan and Advisory, how we can help you if you are on the journey of aligning yourself with DORA. Vasily?
Thank you very much, Kennedy. And of course, thank you for this amazing demonstration. It was really illuminating in seeing how many things we don't know we need in our cloud environment. And speaking of things we don't know we need, now we've talked about a lot of the pillars of DORA. And of course, you've mentioned it, cyber resilience is the main focus of this regulation. But what does it mean, resilience in general? So when can we say we are resilient? So DORA requires from us to be cyber resilient, to have third-party risk management, to share our information with our peers in the industry, to have incident management, to have risk management frameworks. So all of these are really, really great definitions. But until we implement them, they're just that, definitions. So how we're going to ensure that we are compliant, and if we're not, how we're going to be. Now here is where some expertise might be needed. So like we've seen from the demonstration of Kennedy, with Mitigan, we can gain insights and in a very much granular level on how our infrastructure performs, on how our landscape is regarding the requirements of DORA. Now, gaining insights is the first step, but we don't only need insights from our cloud landscape, we also need insights from our general enterprise landscape. And here is where things might get a little bit tricky. And why is that? When we talk about enterprise, we're not talking only about IT. We're talking about a whole mechanism that stands behind the enterprise, which is, of course, the human resources. The procedures that we have in place for our human resources, for our employees to communicate with each other. Third parties, which we rely on as an enterprise. Providers. We've seen, for example, ICT providers are also affected by DORA. And if we work with them, then we are directly or indirectly affected by DORA as well. And here, the journey of our compliance goal might get very complicated. Why is that? Because we do not know what processes we have in place in order to facilitate all of these fancy new requirements of this regulation. We do not know, For example, if there are any services out there from our cloud providers which facilitate our needs for DORA. We've talked about the proportionality principle. Well, if we are, for example, an infrastructure or an institution which accompanies or facilitates thousands or millions of transactions per day or per minute even, then maybe we are heavily affected by DORA. And in order to find that out, we might need some assistance in that. And here is where our partnership between Advisory and Midigan comes into play. As you've seen with Midigan, you can gain insights from all your cloud infrastructure, from all your cloud landscape, and see where are your weaknesses, where do you have potential of building up your resilience. And with Advisory, on the other hand, you can gain insights in your whole enterprise environment and not only drill into the technical part, but also explore what kind of optimization potential do your processes have? What kind of optimization does your cloud landscape have? Because I'm sure Kennedy can attest to that more than I. Every hyperscaler out there, let's just take, for example, AWS, is evolving rapidly. I mean, services that me and Kennedy knew 3 years ago, 2 years ago, maybe they don't exist anymore. Maybe they are outdated, or maybe they are evolved in that kind of state that they are no longer recognizable in the industry. And here is where expertise might help, where external expertise might help, because what EC2, for example, like Kennedy mentioned, could do 2 years ago, today it might be outdated. Today, you might have unexplored potential of your cloud landscape. And here is where you could leverage help from experts in order to explore your potential of becoming cloud resilient and, of course, DORA compliant, which is, of course, the main focus of our webinar today. And how you can be that by not spending thousands or millions of resources in order, for example, to learn how compliance can be achieved on the hard way. That means when the regulator comes into the enterprise and see some irregularities or some deviations from the regulations and poses some significant penalties. We do not want that. You do not want that. What we want is, of course, to be proactive, to take the situations on our own hands. And of course, with our partnership, help you in this journey, in this very complicated, indeed, journey, and take it and making it a little bit less complicated in order for you to gain the maximum of your value, the maximum of your compliance journey. So with that, I would like to appeal to you and say to you that if you feel that DORA compliance is something that bothers you and you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, which of course is very understandable, I would like to say to you, we would like to say to you, me and Kennedy, and of course, Ethan and the whole team of Advisory and Midigan, you're not alone. And we can help you across the journey and make it a little bit less painful, a little bit less complicated, and achieve compliance with maximum potential, with maximum value, and without having to deprive yourself from cloud technologies or innovations at all. So thank you very much, Kennedy, for this opportunity, speaking with you and to your audience. And from my side, if you have any questions at all regarding DORA compliance or cloud infrastructure and how it can be leveraged to achieve DORA compliance, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And Kennedy, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ethan, for this opportunity. And back to you guys.
Yep, thank you so much, Vasily. That was a very comprehensive description of how our partnership helps companies, organizations to align with DORA. We do understand that it's a new regulation, and a lot of companies are trying to figure it out how exactly to proceed. And usually at the same time, it's not just about implementing it, it's about the efficiency. Companies don't want to spend one whole year or months doing just DORA. They want to be able to easily do it without really halting other important aspects of their operations. And that's where we come in, to simplify the process, to make it more efficient, and to allow you to be able to do it without committing so much from your own very scarce resources. So as Vasily mentioned, if you have any questions, if you have any requests, if you want to set up meetings, please reach out to us, and we will definitely support you on your journey. And once again, thank you so much for attending this webinar. We appreciate you. If you are listening, if you're watching live, or if you're going to watch it later, we appreciate taking time to watch this webinar, and feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, everyone, and bye for now.